Okay, welcome. Thank you for coming. We'll start. I think we're at 11:30, so I think that's okay. So welcome. Let me just start by saying it's a great pleasure to be here again. It's the third time I've been to Haninge. It's always a pleasure. It's always a joy. It's always very humbling in terms of being here. Now this session is on professional judgment. And the reason why this session is on professional judgment is, for me, this is one of the things that often gets mentioned when we talk about evidence-informed practice or research-based practice. But we never really talk about it or unpack it. But before we actually go into that in a bit more detail, I'd just like to explain who I am. Basically, I used to work in a place called Jersey. I worked in further education, which is basically post-16 education, adult education. We had a combination of students who were doing, for better phrase, vocational courses, also taught on degrees, also taught on adult education programs. So my experience is with effectively young adults plus. And for the last 4 years I've been writing about evidence-based practice, which you can find on my blog mentioned there. And I tend to tweet about these issues on a weekly basis. Well, I'll tweet a link to my blog on a weekly basis, which can be found at Twitter at Dr. Gary Jones. And if you want to contact me as a result of whatever nonsense that you hear today, then please don't hesitate to contact me at jones.gary@gmail.com. Now, I want you to indulge me for about 15 seconds, okay? And I'll get on to the heart of the business. The reason why I just want you to indulge me is that if you happen to be interested in evidence-based practice, I have a book recently published by Sage, available from Amazon, which I will now not mention again. But actually it picks up quite a few of the issues in here, much more detail. But what I'm going to talk about in this session is linked to the book, but it's quite different from the book, if that makes sense. Okay. So what's going to be my agenda for today's session? Okay, well basically, it's going to be 4 things. We're going to talk about the need to discuss professional judgment. Why do we need to do it? Then explain what I mean by the term. Then we're going to look at some of the problems with professional judgment, and then suggest a couple of ways in which professional judgment could be enhanced and made better. Okay, so those are the 4 things I'm going to try and do in around about 30 minutes, which will give us enough time for some discussion at the end. Does that meet people's expectations? Okay. Well, the reason why I think it's important to talk about professional judgment, particularly in the context of we work at a researchED conference, which is about connecting teachers with research, so hopefully they can make decisions about what they're going to do in their classrooms in order to bring about improvements in pupil outcomes. Is that professional judgment is a fundamental part of evidence-informed practice. So you've got your research evidence, which needs to be rigorous, but the judgment that you bring to it, to its application, also needs to be rigorous. But we tend not to talk about what we mean by rigorous professional judgment. It's almost a given that actually teachers can make professional judgments. We don't talk about some of the problems of actually making those judgments and how things can go wrong, but also how things can go better. Does that seem reasonable? Okay. So we assume that teachers are capable, we are, but are capable of making rigorous professional judgments. Because one of the issues with evidence-based, not issues, but one of the things about evidence-based practice or evidence-informed practice, or whatever you wish to describe it, is that when you're engaging in professional judgment in a school, you'll bring together, hopefully, when you're engaging in rigorous professional judgment, you're bringing together 4 quite different sources of evidence. So you're going to bring together research expertise, the knowledge from research, systematic reviews, meta-analysis. what you're also going to do is you've also got a raft of experience and expertise that you've generated over time, which is relevant to these issues. You've also got data about your school and what's going on in your school, but also there's the views of other people who have got thoughts about this particular issue. These could be parents, local education authorities, the commune or whatever. They've also got views. When you engage in rigorous professional judgment, you're bringing all these sources of information, evidence together to make the best informed decision you possibly can. Professional judgment is not just about relying on your professional expertise, it's about taking these other sources of evidence on board. Yeah? Just excuse me a second, I need to take my jump off. Hopefully my t-shirt won't pull up.
This is bothering me.
Oh, no!
I thought it was something.
I thought I was bothering you somewhere. I would have been upsetting so early into the talk. Okay. So again, what do you mean by professional judgment? And I think I'd just like to offer this definition. If judgment is the ability to arrive at and make a choice when faced with incomplete information and certain conditions or competing goals and values. In other words, you're making a judgment where you haven't got all the information. There are things which are on competition, so that what some teachers might think they want to do, some pupils might think they want to do something, some parents, some colleagues, the authority, all have got different things. You're not quite sure about the conditions that you're operating in. And in a sense, going back to this, you're making a judgment when you haven't got all of this information. Even when you have got all of this information, you still are going to have to make a judgment, and you can argue you never get all the information that you want. So effectively what you do when making a professional judgment is actually you're making a judgment when you've got bits of these here, but not all of it. Now the thing is, why is judgment important? Well, in the context of, I'm going to talk about the context of school leadership here. Not just leadership, but also in terms of organisational leadership, is that in the context of organisations, making good judgments is the most important thing that a leader can do. Because hopefully, if a leader makes good decisions, which are well informed, you're going to hopefully get some good outcomes. Okay. And when a leader shows good judgment, little else matters. On the other hand, okay, if a leader makes poor judgments, okay, things go wrong, and they can go wrong to a very serious extent. That said, it's not possible to get it right all of the time. Just not possible. Hopefully, you'll get it right 70% of the time. And the 30% of the time when you get it wrong will be things which don't really matter as the other 70%. Hopefully what you're going to do is get the big calls right and the little calls wrong. But there is absolutely no guarantee that every time that you make a judgment, when you haven't got all the information together, that you'll get it right. All that you can hope to do is use a process that gives you the best chance of getting it right. Okay. And what I'm talking about here is actually, in this session will be very much about how can you adopt a process which just increases your chances of the best, of working out the best thing to do. It doesn't guarantee that that will work out, but what is the best chance that you're going to generate. Now what I want to do here is very quickly make a couple of points of clarification. We could spend a lot of time looking at the difference between problem solving, decision making and judgment. We could spend a lot of time, but we're not going to do that. I'm just going to make the assumption that all those three terms are interchangeable. Probably in the literature there's a fine distinction between the two, but for our purposes, when we're talking about judgment, We're talking about problem solving, we're talking about decision making, and we're talking about judgment. They're all interchangeable. The other thing about judgment that we're going to, I'm going to argue, is that judgment is also about execution. And what I mean by that is judgment is not just about making the decision to do something, it's also about then doing it and then learning from what you've done. Yeah? So it's very much all-encompassing process. You're actually going to not just make a decision to do something, but good judgment also requires you to have the skills to implement it, but then to learn from that and adjust as you go along. And as Titian Bennett, whose work we'll come across shortly in more detail, basically argues a judgment that's not successfully executed is a failed judgment, no matter how smart it was in the first place. Okay. So, this will work tremendous. Right. Yes, it will work. Okay. What we should do now is think of an occasion when you work at school or whatever setting that you work in, that you've had to make a decision, a judgment about something which has been, for want of a better phrase, difficult or tricky. Okay. I just want you to think, what was it about? And how did you go about making that judgment? Okay, what process did you use to get to the decision that you came to? What happened as a result of that judgment or that decision? And then what did you learn? Okay. So what I'd like you to do, I'll just give you 2 minutes. No, 1 minute or 2 minutes. How many minutes I'll give you to reflect on that? 1 minute or 2? 2? 1? 2 minutes, right. So what I'd like to do for 2 minutes is for you to individually reflect on those 4 points. And then what we'll then do is get you to share that with a person sat next to you. Okay? Those can be a success or they can be a failure. It's entirely up to you. Okay? Right, so 2 minutes on that. Halfway through your time. Okay. So what I now want you to do is to share that judgment, that experience, with a person next to you. So I've got 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. Now that the media people here. Okay.
Är det svenska? Ja. Funderade du också eller tänkte du att det var bara...
Jag tänkte nog att det mest var för er, men du får gärna berätta så kan jag ta någonting som
Jag tänkte på en rätt som gick upp. Det var liksom en stor sak som hände i en annan organisation som jag kunde reagera på. Och så var jag som kom på liksom, att vi skulle kunna göra så här, fast det var liksom inte seriöst. Men vi berättade ändå vad jag som tyckte det var jättebra förslag, så att vi fick göra det. Så det som jag tänkte så här, resultatet du liksom lärde mig från det var så här, ja, man kanske ska tänka igenom. För det blev bra i slutändan, men det blev jäkla massa jobbigt. Ibland kan man vara lite snabb och berätta om sina idéer innan man tänker klart. Så tänker jag. Ja.
Och sen så man får på det så blir det ju lite...
Och i det här fallet så var det liksom inte ens, det var verkligen så här, man borde göra så här, då skulle de få se ungefär. Alltså, det var liksom den slags diskussion.
Ja.
Det blev 9 månaders jobb av det. Det var liksom så här, det blev en stor grej. Det blev bra dessutom. Det var liksom bara det att det var inte riktigt, när vi stod och surade på varsin skolgård hämtning i telefon liksom, och samma skulle göra så här. Ja, jo, det
är häftigt att det ändå liksom blir.
Ja, att vara en sån organisation.
Det är ju verkligen
liksom där man kan komma. Nej, det är det verkligen. Ja. Men du kände igen lite grann?
Ja, men det gör jag. Absolut. Så jag har mest jobbat som jag jobbar sådär. Väldigt länge. Jag jobbar på centralförvaltning.
Which may also come to this is, very likely. They don't understand it. They have doing it for the win. I think I got that from the 7.
Jobbar ju med en hel del med liksom.
Right, so you can share it very quickly.
Det finns mycket man behöver. Det här är ju rätt stor kommun, så här kanske det liksom är tänkt sig.
Jag jobbar i Tyresö och jag jobbar inte på
Nej, men just det, det var det är rätt stor kommun också. Det är ju nästan Stockholmskommuner där är ju är det lätt att arbeta med organisationer och ministerfrågor?
Ja, på vissa delar. Det beror mycket på bara för att man förstår det, för det blir komplext och jag var beredd men det var inte lika
Visst gäller det verkligen att kunna formulera vad det är man gör. Inte minst vad som är resultatet från det sättet just så att liksom ofta vet man inte.
Okay, right. So, is anybody willing to share their story? Silence. Okay. Michelle.
We had a very similar experience.
Okay, we'd like to share.
Yeah, we were talking about a student who did something and ended up getting suspended in 2 different situations. We were kind of talking about the same thing. And we were talking about like the outcomes for the student, and did the student learn, and the outcomes for the school, and the difference between the parents' attitudes to the situation and the teachers' attitudes to the situation. And then I was saying we have to look further down the line. Did it actually work for the student? Is it helping, or did it change his behaviour, or will it change his behaviour?
Yeah, so what you need to do is get beyond the initial decision
exactly,
and explore more the outcomes. Because those are some of the things that have happened. But has anybody got an example where they've experienced a situation where a decision's been made and it's gone, whoops, and it's gone completely wrong? Oops. Anyone got an example? We'll come back to this then. Okay. Right. So, the thing is though, okay, when people make decisions or make judgments, quite often errors creep into the process. Okay. In particular, something known as cognitive biases, sort of systematic flaws in the way in which we go about our thinking. Okay, so I've just picked up 5 there. Groupthink. What do we mean by groupthink? Basically, everybody in the room. Basically, everybody in the room agree. No one challenges what you should be doing. Okay, so the best example of where somebody did something to prevent groupthink was John F. Kennedy, Cuban Missile Crisis 57 years ago. Basically, he made sure that he had a diverse range of opinions in the room in order to stop him blowing the world up, not to put too fine a point on it. Okay. So the big issue around groupthink, you get people together and they think in the same way. If you get people together who think in the same way, they'll gravitate to the most extreme position. There's some quite interesting work on that. You then got prejudgments. What do you mean by prejudgments? Character assassinations. Yeah, so basically, I used to have a real problem. I've got many problems. Okay, but when I was a senior leader, I had a real problem with one member of staff because whatever he said, I thought he was an idiot. He wasn't. The issue was me. Okay, but I prejudged it all the time. I just couldn't get my emotional response. I just couldn't get past it. Actually, what he had to say was actually, bless him, he passed away, was often very sensible. But he carried so much baggage with him that I couldn't get past it at times. And that speaks terribly about me. Then there's confirmation bias. How many times do you go onto Google to look for evidence about something, and basically the thing that you first click on is the thing that confirms your existing opinion? How many people do that? Actually, what you should be doing is go onto Google and look for the first piece of evidence that doesn't confirm what you're doing. In fact, you look for at least 2 pieces of evidence that doesn't confirm what you're doing. Okay. Then there's affective bias, which is all about how your emotions and how you feel will get in the way of your decision making. And there's something called the HALT acronym, which we'll look at in a minute, but I'll just do it now. Never make an important decision if you're hungry, alone, halt. No, hungry, angry, okay, tired, lonely, because there's a good chance you make a bad decision. I worked for a colleague, and we had a rule that actually this member of staff was not allowed to make a decision about a major issue if they were hungry, because they would make often it got in the way of how they actually thought about something. So you need to make sure that you're not hungry, not alone, not tired. And then there's this notion of intuition, which teachers rely a lot upon. Meanwhile, what's your gut judgment? So, what do you mean by intuition? Any offers? What do you mean by intuition?
What you already think?
What you think? Yeah, what your gut tells you. Now, actually, all intuition is actually a very quick process of recognising patterns. You've seen it before, you very quickly do it. You don't actually, you're not aware that you've seen it before, you just do, and you probably can't tell. Now the point with intuition in schools, there's an argument that says that you need certain conditions for intuition to be developed skillfully. I won't go into all the details, but certainly if you're working in an environment which is pretty stable, you get some feedback, there's a good chance you can develop skilled intuition. So if you're a midwife delivering babies, and you will quickly experience, you'll see lots of different things which are very similar, and you'll soon recognise the cues. Same with surgeons. The argument with teaching, though, is teaching is so complex, it's so difficult, it's very difficult to develop this intuition. Doesn't mean you can't have it, but it's very difficult to have intuition which is constantly correct. And you end up making bad decisions. So these are at least 5 things that actually can get in the way of making judgments. Well, just remember that I'm not supposed to walk over there, I'm supposed to stay over here. Okay. But what I would recommend is having a look at this particular website, and these slides will be up on Twitter later today. Okay, so I'll be tweeting the slides, there'll be a link to SlideShare, so you'll be able to get slides. There's a fascinating website by a guy called Buster Benson around cognitive biases, where he has come up with what he called the Cognitive Bias Codex. We've got around about 180 different ways in which our thinking gets in the way of us making good decisions. It's about 180 built-in mechanisms that we have that get, what chance have we got? Okay, that can get in the way of making good decisions. Now, as I say, all listed here, and there's about 20 main clusters of these things, which can be grouped into 4 areas, like too much information, not enough meaning, need to act, what should we remember? Okay. Actually, we've got all sorts of little shortcuts that allows us to cope with too much information, not enough meaning, need to act, which means that we can act, but often we get it wrong. And I would recommend having a look at this website. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, because I'm conscious we've got 10 minutes left. Yes, 10 minutes left? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is just skip a couple of slides and just refer you to a book called Judgement by Titian Bennis, which looks at how great leaders, great teachers, whatever, go about making good decisions, good judgments. And they basically argue that good judgment is based on deep knowledge of these 4 things. Okay. First thing, you've got some sense of who you are and the things that the things that will trigger you to make bad judgments or good judgments. So you've got some sense of that. You've also got social network knowledge. And what that basically means that you've got a group of people around you who are in a position to tell you when you're being a fool or an idiot. I used to have when I worked for the senior leader, I had 2 or 3 colleagues who I gave permission to on a regular basis to tell me when I was being an idiot. It was their job to tell me I was being an idiot. And I didn't take it personally. Well, I did, but you know what I'm trying to get at? You need people who can be honest with you. Yeah? You also need to have organisational knowledge, so you need to know how your organisation ticks and what's going on, and you also need to know about the context in which your organisation works. If you get the knowledge, if you think deeply about these things, you can actually, you've got a chance, you're increasing your chance of making better decisions. Now they then go and argue that actually there's effectively 3 broad areas where people make decisions. One is with crises. The second is with strategy about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. But the one that's probably most important in teaching is about people. Particularly making sure you recruit the right people into the right roles. Or if you're working with people, you understand them so that you don't misjudge them. Okay. Now, they basically argue that when you make a judgment, and when you go through a process of making a judgment, there are 6 stages that you need to go through, okay, to increase your chances of making good judgments. Okay. So, the first thing is actually to sense that there's an issue. Okay. Do you get a sense that there's an issue? So, let's say you're in a house and you can smell something. Okay, it could well be a fire. So you've got to, if you can't smell it or sense it or identify there might be an issue, you then can't say, actually, I think we've got a fire in the house. We better get out. Okay. Well, I better tell the family to get out and then act. So basically you've got to sense it. You then got to frame it and name it, what's happening. You've then got to mobilise people, be your own resources or other people's resources, to help you then address the issue. You've then got to make the decision what you're going to do. Having made the decision, you then got to make it happen. And having made it happen, you've got to then learn and adjust from it. Okay. So what they argue is that to make a good judgment, okay, you need to work through these 6 phases. Sense what's going on, name it, identify what's happening, name it and frame it. Then get people together and say, actually, what have I got this right? What are other people's perspectives on it? Then you need to make a decision. Having made the decision, you then need to make it happen. And having made it happen, you need to reflect upon what you've learned. And if you do that, you'll increase your chances of making a good judgment. Now, what they've done is that they've developed a table whereby effectively they identify what they would call is what a good leader will do and what a poor leader will do against each of those phrases. So a good leader picks up on what's going on. He picks the signals up. There does appear to be an issue with, let's say, absenteeism or behaviour in the classroom. Okay. They then, having picked up the issue, they begin to understand what's going on. And they cut through the complexities. Actually, you know what? We may have an issue about behaviour or punctuality. Actually, we think it is this. Okay. It could well be this, but let's go and explore it. So having then cut through it, got the heart of the issue, they then start getting other people involved to find out the best way of tackling the issue. Tap people up for what I think the term is used here. Okay. They then go and make the decision, but they also then go and explain why they made the decision. So it's not just made the decision, that's it. This is why I made the decision. They then get involved by not necessarily doing it, but making sure, okay, that the people who are involved in executing the decision are supported, and there's a clear monitoring of what's going on. And then at the end of the process, they ask for feedback and they try and learn, and they make adjustments as you go along. And basically, throughout this process, sometimes you're flipping the sequence with arrows, sometimes you're just redoing it. Basically, you might think you understand it here, but you talk to other people, you get a better understanding, and you just flip. On the other hand, a poor leader doesn't understand what's going on. Even if they do understand it, sometimes they might just incorrectly frame it or name it. Doesn't set clear expectations, gets the wrong people involved. When they make a decision, messes about, dilly-dallies, makes a decision, doesn't get involved. I've got 5 minutes left. One to my friend Sarah, isn't it?
Yes.
I've got a 5-minute warning. Okay. Walks away, doesn't measure the outcome. Okay. Does that makes sense as a structure? So, very quickly, because we've only got 5 minutes, I want you to think about a recent judgment made by senior leaders within your school or workplace. Okay. And using that process, identify what happened. You've got 1 minute. Okay. Think of a decision made in your school. Okay. Was it on the top half or in the bottom half? 1 minute. Okay, very quickly, anybody want to share an example where something worked in their school, where that process appeared to be used? Or is it more easy to identify where things went wrong? Actually, it's easier to... often you get judgments, which are more by luck than process. But actually, when you get things wrong, it's often because something's gone wrong here. I remember being involved in a situation where I used to work where we got something horrendously wrong. We got this bit right, we got this bit right. Yeah, we got this bit wrong, big time. Okay, we got the sort of getting the stakeholders on board and enact it and make a decision, big time. We got this bit right. Okay. But because we got this bit wrong, the whole thing went wrong. The whole thing went wrong. And I think the thing is, what this structure does, okay, it provides, if you're in a situation where you're making, and the decision making and judgments are processes, they don't just happen, they take over time. Sometimes you might be saying, you know what, we made this decision about this isn't going well. It's worth at that stage just stepping back and saying, actually, let's just have a look at this slide and can we use it to try and diagnose what's going on? Okay. Can we use it to try and diagnose what's going on? And work out where things are happening or not. Yeah. Have we understood the real issue? You know. So I'll give you a quick example. Where I used to work, we had a problem with student punctuality. The issue wasn't student punctuality, the issue was the buses didn't run on time. So we were giving the students a hard time, and actually it was nothing to do with them, it was actually the fact of the buses. What we needed to do was change the start time of the day. So it's a question of understanding the issue properly. I've got 1 minute left. So, if you're interested in understanding better judgment, there's a really interesting book that's just come out called Evidence-Based Management. On the other hand, I recommend actually more importantly, you can have a look at that. And if anybody wants to have a look, please do. Okay. I actually blog weekly on this type of stuff, so you might be interested in it. But actually, seriously, there are other models of thinking about this. And in the book, I look at this different model about how you go through a 6A process. Okay, look at these things. I haven't gone through that deliberately, but I think it's a bit worth looking at other models. Okay, so if you like to have more information about going about professional judgment, there's my blog, which I post weekly. You can contact me directly by Twitter, or you can email me at jones.gary@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.